Hi guys, my name is Sean. I'm a house plant enthusiast from Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm at Oma Lien nursery here in Indonesia, in Jakarta. As you can see from the title, we're going to be talking all about sansevierias in this episode. It's a highly requested episode and there's going to be a lot of really interesting rare sansevierias I bet you've never seen before. Oma Lien is actually a collector. She's also a seller and she does export. So in case you guys are itching to get some sansevierias, you can contact the Instagram on the screen. If you see anything that you like in this episode, screenshot it, send it to her, and let's see what happens. So without further ado, let's just get this tour started. In this episode, I will be doing a voiceover. The original interview is in Bahasa Indonesia, and I will link the video up above in case you wanted to see in the original language. And the reason that I'm doing a voiceover rather than doing a text caption down below is because a lot of you guys are watching these videos while doing other chores, and you will not be able to keep up with the wordings below. Our guest is Oma Lien, and Oma is actually granny in Bahasa Indonesia, so it probably stands for Granny Lien. She's been collecting sansevierias since the 2000s. She's a collector, breeder, and seller. She's also very active in the sansevieria community, and I hope that you don't mind me calling this sansevierias because I haven't gotten used to calling them Dracaena yet. But for those of you who are hardcore fans of Dracaenas, feel free to take a shot of whiskey or any hard liquor of your choice whenever I say the word Sansevieria. Now, Oma Lien was recounting how hard it was to find sansevierias back then. She had to hunt all over Indonesia in places like Medan and Surabaya to gather them, to collect them. In 2005 or 2006, they tried to promote this plant as a plant that is beneficial for mankind, that will help combat climate change. Now, some studies did suggest that sansevierias are known to remove pollutants from the air. Due to this fact, she became seriously in love with sansevierias and started going as far as Thailand to find sansevierias. There's a sizable sansevieria community here in Indonesia and of course in Thailand as well. A lot of growers here in Indonesia started out as assistants of growers and farmers who had no motivation to work, and in the island of Java itself there are villages where people literally just grow these sansevierias, such as one called Wonosobo in central Java. This is where a lot of hybridizers actually reside, and these young people actually learned from their growers and they learned by trial and error. Now, I think a lot of you guys already know that sansevierias are actually good for indoor use and quite strong, they're durable. However, Oma Lien suggests that they're actually suffering a little bit when you place them indoors, and do not place them in there for months at a time. Do take them out from time to time with a system of rotation, especially during watering days. You want to give them a bit more light, a bit better airflow, and to let the soil dry out better outside. Oma Lien categorizes sansevierias into three types: the flat leaf, round leaf, and the trifasciatas, which you are most familiar with. For the trifasciatas, we have to understand them to succeed. They are actually some of the hardest sansevierias to care for. They have to be treated with fungicide, pesticide, and fertilizers around every 2 weeks or so, as they are highly infectious. Now, this is blowing my mind because I've always thought that the trifasciata might be the easiest sansevierias, but most of the victims that Oma Lien has discovered has been trifasciatas. She said to try to underwater them as they can live up to 1 month without any water. It goes without saying that the trifasciatas are the most common sansevierias, also the most affordable ones out there. So it really is blowing my mind a little bit that they are considered very difficult to care for by an expert like Oma Lien. Now, this is something to blow your mind. Sansevierias do flower, and they flower rather beautifully. This first one is a Sansevieria Eleanor. It's a hybrid by a Mr. Pepito in the Philippines, who is no longer with us anymore. This is a flat leaf type Sansevierias. Really love the silver marking on these, and look at these flowers. Aren't they dramatic? Now, all of the plants we see on this table are hybrids, and as you can see, they are flowering quite beautifully, and you can actually hybridize from these flowers. A lot of the hybrids are quite complex in this genus. Oma Lien did share with us that she likes heavy contrast, whether this is extreme silvers or dark leaves. She claimed that hybridizers of sansevierias are night owls. This is because hybridizing needs to be done at very late nights when the flower is most potent. When a female flower is ready to receive pollen, they secrete sticky substance that pollen can adhere to. Babies will be 70 to 80% closer physically to the mother's gene rather than the father's gene. Now, what I mean by that is that the pollen is taken from the male plant and it is grown on the female plant, where seedlings are formed inside fruits. This is how you define who the mother and the father is of any plant. Now, as I mentioned earlier, about 70 to 80% of the physical traits will come from the mother's genes. However, the color can be equal between the father and the mother. This means that the coloration of the plants are 50-50% from the mother and the father. This is why a variety of them can be achieved in hybridizing. For the same pair of hybrid, simply switching the genders around as to who the mother or the father is will make a huge difference in the varieties. Now, sansevierias can actually self-pollinate. By the act of nature, Oma Lien has had one seed before. But on the contrary, if you hand-pollinate them, you could result in over 1,000 seeds. Now, it takes about a year for these seeds to become seedlings and maybe another year for them to reach a juvenile stage. This tends to be a challenge for the breeders as they have to select the best traits from their crosses, and it takes up so much space and time before you can actually select the traits. Now, the best time for flowering tend to be the warmer and drier weathers away from rainy seasons. And Oma Lien has complained that our weather pattern has been quite inconsistent as of late, so flowering has become inconsistent as well. Based on her experience, each plant only flower once per plant, and then they will put up pups from below and then they will die off eventually. This is a very similar behavior with the bromeliads. Now, some specimens take 10 to 15 years to flower depending on care, environment, as well as the species type. Now, of course, flower can be induced earlier with supplements such as phosphorus. Did you know that the flowers are actually fragrant? So Oma Lien told me a ghost story where she had a helper that lives in the house, and in Indonesian culture, if you smell something funky, something fragrant in the middle of the night and you do not know where the source is, one would automatically assume it is a visit from the other world, if you know what I mean. So she was super freaked out, and then she hid in her room every night for a few nights, refusing to come out even for the bathroom or to get a glass of water. When Oma Lien came back one night, pretty late, she tended to one of these flowering sansevierias, and that is when the helper realized that is where the scent is coming from. Now, the fragrance is known to emanate throughout the house, so they are actually very strong in their scent profile. To propagate sansevierias, you can also take out leaf cuttings, or you can also take the babies off the site. Now, Oma Lien said that when the sansevierias age, they actually produce less and less pups. This is kind of similar to what a human being does. And there's actually a trick where you can take out the apical bud of the plant by piercing something sharp like a nail right through the heart of the plant, right up down the middle, to release it off its apical bud. They will start releasing a lot of baby pups over time, and they will not flower probably because you have relieved them of their main growth. But this is how you can get baby plants or clones of the same plant very, very quickly. This behavior is also very, very similar to bromeliads. Now, as a lot of you already know, sansevierias have been reclassified into Dracaenas, so those in favor of calling these Dracaenas from now on are probably silently clapping right now. I'm going to insert on the screen right now the photo of a Dracaena flower to see if it's anything remotely similar to a sansevieria flower, so you can be the judge of that yourself. Now, here's what I want you to notice. If you get up close to the flowers and you pretend you are a small critter or insect looking at these worlds, they are rather attractive. So these flowers are meant to attract pollinators, and that is why they look the way that they do. Oma Lien told me that these flat-leafed sansevierias, such as the Kirky eyes, which is very, very popular, are actually very difficult to hybridize. They only want to breed with its own type, which is the flat-leafed, and it's probably very difficult or nearly impossible to breed with different types of sansevierias. But she's imagining a world where one day we could get many different forms by hybridizing different forms of these sansevierias. With that being said, we will be concluding this episode, but there will be a part 2 next week where we actually walk through her collection to see some incredibly rare sansevierias. We're going to see some variegated ones as well, and Oma Lien will be sharing care tips for some of these sansevierias. So I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching.